I made a video last year talking about if we've reached peak beginner bike. I was talking about the RC390 at that time because to me, that bike really represented quite the pinnacle of a beginner sport bike. Has adjustable suspension, a beautiful steel trellis frame that's ultra agile, a little single cylinder engine. But I think one of the issues with the RC390 specifically is its reliability. The single cylinder isn't really that great for sport riding. Multi-cylinder bike always going to be better than a single cylinder bike for sport bike riding because of the smoothness, the power characteristics, the ability to build revs. We did the ZX-4RR, and I felt like that motorcycle was close to what a peak beginner bike might be, but I think it still made a little too much power. It was a little expensive, it was a little heavy. But then when this Aprilia RS457 was announced, I was like, ooh, this is an interesting bike. This is a really, really interesting motorcycle. And I actually purchased this Aprilia RS457 to give away on yammynoob.co. So if you're interested in getting this motorcycle for free, head over to the website and become a member. You'll stack up your entries to win the motorcycle, get access to our Discord server. If you don't want to do that, which totally fair, you can pick up a hat, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and every dollar you spend gets an entry to win as well. But this motorcycle is getting given away very, very soon, so don't miss it. And when I bought this motorcycle, I was kind of like, okay, they kind of took a shrink rate to an RS660, which is no bad thing because the RS660 is a fantastic motorcycle. I gave that one away in 2021, had that motorcycle for quite some time, track tested it, tons of fun, really game-changing kind of bike. It really kicked off the sort of not-so-super sporty bike thing that's happening nowadays. And this RS457 is just following in its footsteps, but at a dramatically reduced price. You know, MSRP is $67.99 for this machine. Famously, my ZX-4RR, I paid $13,000 out the door because, it was a super hot commodity when it came out. I was one of the first people in Texas to have a ZX-4RR, so it was not easy to get, and I had to pay a bit of a premium at the dealership for it. But this motorcycle, you know, the RS457 comes in significantly cheaper than that, even out the door. AF1 got me a good deal here, and I paid $8,200 for this machine, or thereabouts. And so $8,200 you say for a beginner bike, man, that's kind of, a little spicy. But I think realistically, this thing provides so much bang for buck and smile per miles that it really is, to me, the new peak of beginner bike. And this thing, if there was like an SP variant with perhaps fully adjustable suspension, quick shifter standard, because as you guys can tell, I'm shifting with the clutch on this model because I didn't get the quick shifter because I had to act fast with this thing because we needed it for content. That's sweet, sweet content on YouTube, so no quick shifter fitted to this bike. But if you had an SP variant, maybe, that had fully adjustable suspension up front, maybe an Olin shock out back, quick shifter fitted standard, with the way that this thing makes power and the characteristics of it, and most important of all, this thing's killer feature, the aluminum twin spar frame that no other beginner bike has in this category. No beginner bike has this thing's frame. And it's 380 something pound wet and ready to ride curb weight, which, in sort of race trim, you could probably bring it down, but for street trim, that is plenty light enough. And it fits the perfect A2 compliance for this machine. I really think this is the best bike in the category. It's the peak, man. I don't see how any other bike beats this bike. Having ridden the vast majority of them, I don't see how any other bike, stock for stock, beats this motorcycle. CF Moto 450 SS is a nice motorcycle. It's a good motorcycle. This thing's better. It handles better. It feels better. The engine is just crisper. It responds better. It just, it comes from a company that you can tell has obviously been building sport bikes for a long, long time. There's a reason there's a 54 world title sticker on that Aprilia right there. They know what they're doing. Much more than CF Moto. No dig to no shame to CF Moto. I know lots of you own CF Motos in the comments and you love your CF Motos, and that's cool, man. You can keep riding your CF Motos. I'm not going to hate on you. I do think it's a Chinese motorcycle, and there is something to be said about the fact that, those companies unfairly compete with the U.S. market here. They're subsidized by the Chinese government in a lot of ways. I don't know if CF Moto is, but I know DJI Cameras is, for example. And so, I don't know. I personally wouldn't buy a Chinese bike for myself. That's all I'm going to say about it. But you know, when it comes to Aprilia, they've been building bikes for a very long time. They know what they're doing. And again, I think the track record for reliability for an Aprilia is similar to a CF Moto. And this is a substantially better motorcycle than the CF Moto. I think the Ninja 500, you know, it's a slightly lazier engine. It's still basically the same architecture of the Ninja 400, which is a slightly bigger engine inside of it. And so I don't think that that bike really has anything for this RS457. And I really think we're at a new level with this thing, man. I really think this is now the peak of the beginner bike category. Sport bikes anyways, because if you want to talk beginner bikes in general, there's obviously other beginner bikes that are as good or better than this for different reasons, right? Like a Sportbike 401, great bang for buck, adjustable suspension, cool futuristic looks, a little more capable than this in scrambly environments, more upright, better urban manners, but not a sport bike, right? This thing would demolish it on track. But I don't think anyone's taking the Sportbike 401 on track and expecting it to be some sort of monster. But it really just blows my mind. And one of the things that's happening that I think is allowing us to reach these new peaks and keep the prices reasonable is these partnerships with India, right? This motorcycle is built in Piaggio's factory in India. This allows them to keep labor costs lower on this machine. It allows them to sell it to you at you could say an artificially lower price because they had to produce the motorcycle in a different country. If they were to build these in Italy and pay Italian labor, this bike would easily cost $9,000 or $10,000 at least, you know, just so that they can recoup some of the costs, right? Triumph did it with their Speed 400, one of my favorite new motorcycles of 2024. I think a standout smash hit, and you know, it's an Indian produced motorcycle. It's a partnership with Bajaj, and so I think that's where we're seeing the gains now, dollar for dollar, right? Because you could make, like, the ZX-4RR is a, you know, a very awesome beginner bike, very great beginner sport bike, especially in bone stock configuration. But, you know, it's expensive. It's a $9,000+ motorcycle MSRP. And, you know, I don't know what a Indian produced ZX-4RR would look like, but I don't know. But, you know, going along the same thread here, that's the reason why we're seeing these beginner bikes be so good and yet so cheap. And that's super important, because I do think a beginner bike should be cheap. I do think this bike here is really pushing the envelope. And when push comes to shove, if you were to really ask me, like, is that your most recommended beginner bike? I'd say no. This is the best beginner bike, but it's not the one I'd recommend. I'd still recommend that you go and buy a used Ninja 400, because that's objectively the best entry-level sport bike you can get dollar for dollar, because you can buy them used all day for like $4,500 tops. You know, a great example you can buy for $4,500, and that's basically half the price, a little more than half the price of this brand new. And it's not half the bike. You know, a Ninja 400 is about 80% the bike that an RS457 is, you know? It doesn't have this beautiful sonorous parallel twin. It may not be something that you can quote-unquote grow into for as long, but I still think a used Ninja 400 is going to be your best bet, you know? And so that's also why I think we've reached beginner bike peak, because they've produced so many Ninja 400s that you don't really need to go and buy anything new anymore, you know? The used market is saturated with very good used motorcycles. You're not going to get something horribly outdated. There's diminishing returns now, you know, like hardcore diminishing returns. We're getting to the point where year over year, and you see this in the car market too, and the cell phone market for if you want a great example of this, you know, one year to the next, cell phone, car, motorcycle, there's no more quantum leaps. There's no more giant killer features and must-have features, you know? What's happening is maybe Aprilia will build a brand new platform like this, and you'll say, oh, okay, the beginner category in general has received a bit of a leap because Aprilia built a new motorcycle that is pretty sweet. But, you know, I tell you guys this a lot. I've harped on the Ninja 500, 400 debate quite a bit, but, you know, you're not getting that much different or better of a motorcycle if you get a Ninja 500 versus a 400. You're just not. You're getting 51 extra cubes of displacement, a little TFT display. Like, none of that really matters. Like, it's still fundamentally the same thing. It's a liquid-cooled parallel twin engine that makes adequate power in a frame that's pretty darn good, you know? That's all you really need to worry about. You don't have to go and get the brand spanking new thing anymore. You really don't. It's totally not necessary. And that's why I think when these come down in price, when you can get a used RS457, that might be when we reach ultimate beginner sport bike. When you can pick these up on the secondhand market for $5,000 or whatever. Oh my God, $5,000 for this? That's a steal. That's incredible. But that's already kind of happening with the other ends of the market too, you know? You can get a fantastic naked bike for not much money, you know? And the new ones aren't that much better. So it's kind of happening everywhere in the motorcycling market, man. You don't have to spend top shelf dollar to get the best of the best. And the big thing is, beginner riders, man, you're going to drop the bike. You're going to do stupid stuff. You're going to strip some bolt trying to change something. You're going to change the oil and get oil everywhere. Just do dumb stuff, you know? Like, beginners just tend to do dumber stuff with their bikes. And wouldn't you rather do that dumb stuff on a cheapo little Honda or a Kawasaki than a nice brand new Aprilia? Granted, if you're older, you know what's going on, you know what you're about, I don't care. Get a Aprilia RS457, right? Like, that's no problem. It's no skin off my back. But the vast majority of beginner riders are younger people, right? They're younger people with less means. And, you know, there's definitely something to be said about starting motorcycling at a later date in life, because you will have more income, more disposable income, in theory, right? Usually. And you'll also have the ability to probably manage your expectations and your skill sets a little bit better, take things a little bit more carefully and patiently, and enjoy the hobby and have fun with it and progress with it in a fun way. But I speak to the younger audience because that's a vast majority of my viewers. A lot of my viewers are sort of 18 to 34 or so. There are very vocal and very strong contingents among you that are 40 plus and getting your first motorcycle. And honestly, I think that's great. I really hope that I can get into something new when I'm 40 or 50. I think that's what life is about. Life is about trying new things and getting out there and putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. There's really no fun to be had to just being, you know, comfortable all the time. That's really not what you want to be doing with life, you know? And putting yourself in those situations is definitely going to improve. I really think the 270-degree crank has been a revelation in motorcycling. It used to be relatively rare. The MT-07 had it, and then nobody was really making parallel twins with the 270 crank. And then in the last 5 years even, everybody makes a parallel twin with the 270 crank. And it's no longer special or interesting, but it's a great engine, you know? It kind of feels like in the early 2000s when every car had a V6 option. Every car, you could get a Camry with a V6, and a Accord with a V6, everything had a V6, you know? And the parallel twin's kind of like the V6 of the motorcycling world. You know, you're like, oh, it's capable, simple, easy to build, package it in, economical, call it a day. But the grumbly nature of a 270 parallel twin has really made these bikes so much better, so much more interesting to ride. Because the 180-degree parallel twin, it's just a boring engine, right? It's just a little bit more boring. And so that's been a fantastic evolution in this market as well. And this little bike really is a lot of fun to ride, man. It really is. I really hope it goes to a good home, a new rider. You know, when we give this thing away, I really hope that someone is going to enjoy this thing for the great little sport bike that it is.
Boys, you've made it to the end of this video. There's no more content, but there is a vast catalog of Yami Noob content you can keep watching. And in fact, if someone in the comment section could actually crunch those numbers and tell me how long you could continuously watch Yami Noob, I would love to know. It's probably months, if not years. And while you're at it, go to YamiNoob.co and get signed up to win this RS457. You guys already know what's going on. You know the deal. If you're a longtime fan of giveaway bikes, head to the site, get entered to win. Keep watching Yami Noob.